focus on, in the midst of the suffering, the grief observed, there's so much more to look forward to. And that's where the whole image of go further up and further in. So that's the end of this first conference here. Are there any questions before we take a break? Yeah. So one right up here. I'll try to repeat it too, so that you can get it.
I was born in December of 1963. One of the things I remember is Jack Caver shot a month before that, so actually it was 1963. I just looked it up on.
I think then I must have made a mistake up there then, because they're within 55 minutes or so.
Just looked up Lewis Tolkien.
I'll have to change that part. Yes.
What was the name of that book? You said there was a second to the last book you wrote about the women.
Oh, it's called Until We Have Faces, or Till We Have Faces, and it is the retelling of the famous Greek tale, Roman tale, Cupid and Psyche.
The three books that he wrote, what age would that be appropriate?
What's that?
The three books that he wrote.
The trilogy one?
The trilogy.
Those,
they're an adult or is it a 12, 13-year-old?
It's probably more of an adult. I read it when I was late high school. And then I don't think I really understood it to this depth. But then when I read it when I was in college, it really came much more alive. So it's a deep, and it's a lot of these questions of, even questions of if there's, he's just sort of postulating ideas that are there, saying, let's just suppose, and this is one of his things about different worlds, the world of Narnia. We can talk about that a little later, but let's just suppose that there are life, that there is life on Mars or whatever, and they happen to be ones that can love, that can think, that have a soul, then is Jesus Christ their Lord? And ultimately the answer is Jesus Christ is the Lord of the universe. And so it's kind of different sort of retellings of the fall, what if the fall never happened, but then also the hideous strength deals with our earth and the whole idea of scientism that's trying to cut, it's kind of a Frankenstein sort of story. So one of them deals with Mars, one of them deals with Venus, and then one deals with Earth. They're really, really fun. There's even a movie of one of them called Out of the Silent Plain. It's a black and white movie. Yeah.
What was the name of that book that he goes into the woman's mind?
So that's Till We Have Faces. And it's one of those books, I read that in college, and it's one of those books that when you read it at first, you will probably, if you know C.S. Lewis's other things, you will probably kind of be like, is this really C.S. Lewis? Because there's something a little scandalous, not bad in that sort of sense, but just the way in which he's talking about the faith, but it's all about through the eyes. It depends on through the eyes of who. And this is being told from the point of view of the wicked older sister, Aurora, who's the older sister of Psyche. And so it's really this image of looking through her eyes and going through the whole story, and you only really understand at the very, very end what everything was really about. So it's just brilliant on so many different levels. But it would be good to read the actual story, the myth, before you read that, because it'll help you understand it. Yeah.
So where does that book come in terms of his marriage and all that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that's one of his later ones. So it could have been done, because he was only married for just that little bit of time. He might have written that during the time, but I don't remember that. But it's definitely one of his last kind of novels. Yeah. That's the interesting thing, is he never says who that is. Maybe because he didn't want to Like maybe it's like the professor right next door or something. Because he became a professor there. And actually, it's interesting. C.S. Lewis, I don't think I mentioned it in here, but he didn't become an Oxford Don for a very, very long time, which is like a professorship. And it's because he was doing a lot of these other things that a lot of his peers said that he's just this popular writer who's out there. In some ways, kind of like how sometimes people make fun of Scott Hahn in saying that he doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's just kind of a surface level pop culture scripture scholar. But then when you actually see like when he really does like deeper like doctoral thesis kind of things, I mean, he blows people away. He's like, yeah, I do know it, but I'm speaking on a different level. And C.S. Lewis was like that too. So Tolkien is the one who helped his friend get that position. And one of the things Tolkien said is you have to sit put for a little bit, and you have to like do courses and things like that, and actually show that you really know medieval history, medieval philosophy, medieval, all that different stuff. He was a medievalist, like Tolkien was. So Tolkien helped him and talked to the other people because they respected J.R.R. Tolkien, and they said, he ultimately did get that position. Yeah.
I thought that, and maybe, I think this is that book of Severe Mercy.
Yes.
C.S. Lewis had trouble in that position because of his Christianity and almost had a hidden aspect of that part of his personality. Now, did J.R.R. Tolkien have that same kind of hiddenness to gain that respect?
So the question, like looking at Tolkien's life in comparison to C.S. Lewis's life.
Yeah.
So I'll give kind of a little short, because that's a whole nother conference. But so Tolkien, his mother, so his father died when he was young. His mother converted to the Catholic faith through the Oratorians, who were the ones with Blessed John Henry Newman. And basically she started to listen to their homilies, which were rich in like the fathers of the church and scripture, and said, I have to go this path because this is the truth right here. Her whole family excommunicated her, cut off all of her financial support, and so she basically was by herself with two kids. One of the kids actually died, and Mabel Tolkien was her name. She basically worked very painful hours so that she actually got sick and died. And so before he was even like 14 years old, he had no one in his family. Everyone died. And the one who actually took care of him in the will was Father Francis Morgan. So his image of fatherhood is actually a Roman Catholic priest, who then became someone who became sort of the father figure for J.R.R. Tolkien. So he talks about how when he was a kid, he would run when his, if I remember right, it was something like when Mabel Tolkien died, then he had to live with his aunt, which didn't really like him and basically made it miserable and saying, you're just not welcome here, but you just have to be here. And so he couldn't wait to like run to go to daily mass, to be a server there. He loved the fraternity and the joy of the Oratorian monks that were there. And so that's his whole experience growing up. And so he has this very deep Roman Catholicism that's there. And he, he was someone that said that the greatest thing in the world, the thing that leads you to everything, is the Eucharist. And that's where you will find all romance, all glory, the true way of all of your loves here on earth. So very, very deep, deep stuff. So Tolkien is very different than C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis had a broken religious background strayed away and then was brought back through the midst of myths and all the literary tradition. So he has that ability of being an apologist, and because he knows the other side. But then Tolkien is very much like, as a child, he just grew up and he saw his mother as a martyr for the faith, because she literally died, rather than they said, we'll give you money, but you have to leave this faith and come back to ours. And she said, I can't leave the Eucharist. I can't leave my church. And And they said, well, fine, you can die. And ultimately, that's what she did. And so Tolkien, when he saw some of his own kids kind of straying away, he spoke about that, saying, you don't realize what your grandmother, like, she died so that I could be Catholic. And so take this, I take this very, very seriously. And so it's a very powerful, like, he just very much had that in his own experience of never forsaking that because of his mother dying for him to have life in the faith. So very powerful stuff on both sides. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. Is that good?